War and conflict bring out some of the worst and most devastating weapons this world has ever seen. But these periods of time also brew up many ideas and conceptions that are just so outlandish and so out of place with conceptual weaponry that one could only question how someone could think of such an idea. Well, today we shall be looking into 5 such weapons, either created or conceived by the US military throughout its history. Starting off the list is a rather strange and seemingly ridiculous plan by the US during World War II. The military back then thought up of a way to bomb Japan, not with just simply a massive detonation, but with thousands of bats. Yeah, you heard me right, so buckle in for this one. Thought up by Dr. Lit S. Adams and fueled with anger towards the Japanese after the recent Pearl Harbor bombing, this dentist turned his thoughts and ideas towards the war effort. And what was his inspiration? None other than the Mexican free-tailed bats, which he was greatly impressed upon during his vacation to New Mexico the year prior. Now I know these seem extremely outlandish nowadays, but back then it was a different time, and this man's plan actually made it through to the president's desk and was given support by our military. Now dubbed Project X-Ray, the plan was to create a bomb which would house hundreds of bats inside. These bats would then be outfitted with specially timed explosives as they would seek out locations to hide and rest. The military hoped and planned for them to find cover in attics of homes within Japanese cities and villages. The main goal was not to spread the distance of the blast, but rather to set fire to the homes, as most saw as being nothing more than straw or wooden huts. Tests were in fact scheduled for this to go down. It actually was working. One test resulted in significant damage on the mock setup of a Japanese village. However, as time passed on, the project would be pushed further and further towards the back of the shelf, as all resources were now focused on completing and researching the atomic bomb. Adams, till his death, continues to support the idea of his bat bombs, claiming that it would have been a very devastating effect on the Japanese nation, while also resulting in far less loss of life compared to that of the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Whether or not this is true, we will never really know. World War II brought upon several conceptions and weaponry that ranged from extremely devastating and humane to downright childish in a sense. One such weapon would be known as the Who? Me? Strange, I know, but bear with me. The weapon was a sulfuric stench weapon and was used in non-lethal terms against Axis forces by the French resistance. The weapon was created by the American Office of Strategic Services and was meant to be carried around in pocket-sized atomizers and intended to be sprayed out against German forces. The kicker here is, however, that this sulfur-based spray was meant to resemble the smell of fecal matter. The use of this odor was intended to humiliate the soldier targeted and therefore demoralize the force's efforts in the fight. One major issue though for this weapon was that whomever was spraying usually ended up smelling just as bad as whomever it was intended for. It would only be 2 weeks into Humi's deployment before concluding and later deemed a failure. A more recent installment on this list, this weapon was created for intended use in Afghanistan. Dubbed the Active Denial System or ADS, a non-lethal energy-directed weapon with intent to be used during the Afghanistan war and would provide a ranged focused attack against enemy forces. The ADS, or heat gun in other terms, is capable of heating up the surface of whatever it was directed towards, including the skin of whomever was in range. On June 21, 2010, the ADS was confirmed to have been employed into Afghanistan. However, come July 25th of the same year, the weapon was brought back to the US, a decision made by commanders on the ground over in Afghanistan, claiming that the weapon systems were not at an operational level for effective use. Several problems also seemed to arise that were not entirely addressed before being deployed overseas. Targets within crowds or hiding in specific locations seemed to not be as affected by the rays as those who were out in the open and singled out. It seemed as though additional and extra clothing would also play a role in hindering the effects, as exposed skin resulted in much more side effects than that under clothing. Another major issue would be that of weather conditions such as rain, snow, sleet, or mist. These causes affected the ADS in a way that its intended overheat would become more of a comfortable warm sensation. Or another unofficial problem, but I mean, SPF 50, I feel like it may take a little bit of the edge off of this as well. Ranked high on this list is the Puke gun. I know, these things just seem to get more and more unreasonable as we move on. But I am not the one who created these, so just talk to people in charge of creating weapons. Anyways, the Puke gun, I'm only going to call it that because it's fun, is a strobe light based weapon used for non-lethal intent. An idea that the Department of Homeland Security believed was a rather time and money worthy investment, sinking close to $1 million towards research and creation of this device. Now this type of weaponry can be dated back into World War II, when American tanks were once able to be outfitted with candle-powered strobe light attachments. These additions made targeting tanks at night harder to predict and narrow in upon, as well as causing dizziness, off balance, and in some cases nausea to those in close range. Now the goal was to focus this sort of potential into a handheld weapon that can neutralize an individual with repeatedly flashing lights. Well, the thing is, there was no guarantee that this sort of thing was even capable of producing these effects on a target, let alone incapacitating them and causing them to lose their lunch. To make matters even worse, hardware hackers Lemur Fried and Phil Tarone managed to create their own DIY versions of this device, and for simply just $250. Although the duo did get struck with the same realization that there was no guaranteed effect, it is a little sad that two average guys were able to kind of outdo $1 million funded research group. Topping off this list is one that usually ranks number one in most, however it's a concept that honestly shows the mindset of individuals at the current time. A bomb whose intent was to use human pheromones in order to turn enemy soldiers on one another with homosexual interest. Researchers over at the U.S. Air Force submitted a 3-page proposal to the Pentagon chief in order to develop a lust-focused chemical weapon. These papers were submitted in 1994 by the Wright Laboratory in Ohio, a section of the Air Force. These papers proposed a weapon dubbed the gay bomb. Documents obtained by the Anti-Biological Weapons non-governmental organization known as the Sunshine Program shine some light upon some of the details into what the laboratory intended for. These documents pointed out that the lab requested for a 6-year, $7.5 million grant in order to research and create a variety of non-lethal weaponry. The Wright Lab also had several ideas for other bombs, such as the bad breath bomb, or ones that would attract swarms of insects meant to sting and distract enemy combatants. But the gay bomb continues to be their most outlandish attempt to date, as the bomb was intended to house chemicals that would not only turn targeted soldiers gay, but also cause them to be so overly attracted to one another that any means of fighting back would be virtually impossible. Now, the Pentagon stands by their notion that their interest on the topic was rather short-lived, that they came to the realization of this absurdity quickly in its lifespan. However, the Sunshine Project once more illuminates the situation, stating that this proposed interest much longer than let on about, and that the Pentagon actually submitted these proposals to high-ranking scientific minds for review, which later on would be proven true, as in 2002 the proposals were indeed submitted to the National Academy of Sciences. Now, many people probably would be wondering how such a weapon could have been conceived. Well, at the time, President Bill Clinton was supporting the notion of allowing homosexuals to partake in the US military. Despite this, these individuals were often seen as being incapable or incompatible for the military life. So the idea of an enemy army completely being formed of such individuals made for some the idea of an easy victory. Luckily, the project never really reached that far off the ground, and the bomb was never created. If it was, I honestly do not have any clue as to how war or the world itself would be shaped at the moment, especially if it had the capacity to alter people's sexual orientation. That is all for today. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of the video, and I hope you enjoyed the list. Write down which you think was the most puzzling weapon in your mind, or if there were any that I may have left out. Once more, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button. I love making videos for you guys, and it would be greatly appreciated. Also, do not forget to check out my social media, especially if you want to get in contact with me. Links will be down in the description below. I also want to take a moment to thank everyone for helping me hit my first 1,000 subscribers on this channel. It is honestly such a crazy idea that I could even come close to this number, but seeing the community grow, I truly am grateful for so many amazing people partaking and enjoying in my content. So once more, I want to thank you guys, and if you are not subscribed already, I upload every Tuesday and Friday, so if you enjoy creepy and strange topics, consider hitting the subscribe button down below. That's it for today, guys. I will see you again on Tuesday, and until then, stay spooky.